I'm doing MSNBC and Fox News. Who can you depend on? The Chauvin trial case. The Chauvin trial case, I'm going to be focusing in on MSNBC and Fox News, the video media sources, so actually directly from the TV itself. I'm going to be focusing on my criteria for analysis, pre-verdict news stories, post-verdict news stories, analysis, and final thoughts. So my criteria, I looked up ethical, unbiased journalism, and I kind of basically took from that and looked at different elements. So I put facts over opinion, only relevant information, accurate videos, sound, photos, and unbiased word usage. So this is the pre-verdict.
We're going to begin with the case against former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin for the death of George Floyd, now in the hands of a sequestered jury. The panel of 6 white and 6 black or multiracial jurors began deliberating at 4 o'clock Central Time yesterday.
So for MSNBC, the pre-verdict, MSNBC is focusing mainly on the trial and how the verdict may turn out, but at the time, no one knew. They showed a picture of the protesters, as you can see here, and they explained that it was a mixed race jury of white and black jurors. So Fox News pre-verdict.
5 on this to talk about this a little bit. There was a move by the defense attorney, Eric Nelson, to say he wanted to ask for a mistrial. One, he thought that because the jury had not been sequestered, that was a problem. He also then pointed to comments that we've been talking about on the channel a bit today, and that is the comments by Congresswoman Maxine Waters, in which she suggested, as you saw in that clip, maybe just before we went back to the judge, calling for a confrontation if the verdict does not turn out the way that she wants.
So what is happening here is Fox News is focusing on Maxine Waters' statement and the possible retrial, and Fox states that the jury wasn't sequestered and how Waters' comments could be cause a mistrial. So after the verdict, I decided to do post-verdict in real time with both Fox and MSNBC live. So as you can see, they're doing the protesters. They're focusing in on the protesters. And this is actually focusing in on the family at the news podium. This is MSNBC. And it's worth noting that other news programs on CNN and New York One were also showing live footage of the news podium. This is MSNBC post-verdict. So in this clip, MSNBC shows the trial and discusses how high-ranking police officers spoke up against Chauvin, and they also might get repercussions for that. And later on, they talk about how good police officers will be affected by this. And here's another one. Unfortunately, there is no audio here. But during this, they're talking about how the threats or the veiled threat or overt threat of violence and how the protesters might end up being violent. And they end up also talking about Judge Cahill's remarks and how he was silenced for going against the protesters. It also shown a little later on, I'll just do that right here, that Maxine Waters is, Representative Maxine Waters is mentioned again. And I also wanted to point out that both MSNBC and Fox News showed the president at the same time. So here's my analysis. And I wanted to start it off with, the danger is not that all of us are living in echo chambers, but that a subset of the most politically engaged and vocal among us are. So who is more biased? Here's my criteria. So I wanted to look at both of course, our echo chambers. And I wanted to state that, as Spy stated, in the U.S., media polarization mirrors the left right divide in party politics, with MSNBC opposing Fox News, which is what I'm focusing on. Though with right-wing media lying further from the center than left-wing media, so that's another thing to keep in mind. So for the Fox News, in fact over opinion. So do they do this? So I wanted to state that the Fox News talks about how the jury wasn't sequestered. This is disinformation because the jury was sequestered. The defense asked if the juror could be questioned again because of the police shooting of 20-year-old Dante Wright. This was after the jurors were already sequestered for this trial. Judge Cahill denied it this time because it had nothing to do with this Chauvin trial. This was actually on April 12th, which was a little over a week prior to the newscaster stating that disinformation after the shooting of 20-year-old Dante Wright. So Fox, facts over opinion, they don't do it. MSNBC mostly commented on the trial itself, but on the side of George Floyd. They talk about how it was barbaric, how there were high-ranking officials and good police will be affected by this. However, it's focused more on the facts than on opinion. So unbiased word usage, I'm just showing that that's a big no because of the fact that if we're looking at, Judge Cahill was attacked for because he had common sense. There were threats, and they were discussing as if it was riots and everything like that. Even stuff like Maxine Waters, it doesn't come out the way she wants. This is about a murder trial, mind you. And for unbiased word usage for MSNBC, they also did unbiased word usage, specifically with the term barbaric. So for only relevant information, this I'm going to go back to MSNBC did not disclose Representative Maxine Waters' commentary, but that was the only thing not mentioned probably because it didn't have to do with the trial, but CNN did cover it and Fox News covered it quite a lot, actually. There's 9 YouTube videos at least on just Representative Maxine Waters alone. It was also mentioned after the trial, the comments, and talked about the threat of protesters becoming violent when at that point there was no reason to mention it. So on relevant information, MSNBC gets a no-go and Fox News gets a no-go. MSNBC, I would say, was a lesser extent because Fox News focused so much on it as opposed to the trial. But they still both did it. They still both didn't do all relevant information. So for accurate videos, sounds, and photos. So this one is definitely Fox News doesn't do that because they focus mostly on the protesters instead of the trial. Even with the live footage of the after trial, MSNBC showed the after videos. Fox News also talked about how they shouldn't show the videos during the trial, the video of George Floyd being murdered. And that's another reason why they are not working. So is it who's more biased? I would say, according to my criteria, Fox News is more biased. But I wanted to say, in this specific incident with Maxine Waters, it does not mean it's that Fox News was promoting mis or disinformation, but it was a misleading information. And that's the pattern I saw most. So as we know, disinformation is about sharing false information. But then there's this misleading information. And what I see that as, they are stating correct information, but in a way that distracts from the bigger issues and not the point of the story. Whereas MSNBC, even though they did not show Maxine Waters' comments, this seems like a lot less of an issue than the actual case itself, with, as I said, the murder of George Floyd by a police officer. So that's why I would consider MSNBC to be the least biased of the two newscasts. I would also say it's hard to be unbiased because your words can be unbeknownst to you. So I think it is possible to be unbiased, but you have to be very self-aware, know credible sources as well as uncredible sources, and know and be willing to do research to find the whole truth. So my final thoughts. Did this change my view? No, it didn't. As trench warfare that's discussed in Spies article of 2020, trench warfare. Media users encounter opposing arguments and like-minded ones, but those oppositional encounters tend to reinforce their existing attitudes. That happened to me because it solidified my views that Fox News isn't truthful, even though they consider or state themselves as such according to Spies. That was what my personal interpretation was, considering everything that we've talked about. And what I also wanted to say, remember what Spies says. With misinformation and disinformation, without amplification, disinformation goes nowhere. Thank you.